Welcome to Uncanny X Minutes, where we bring you the comics behind the movies. I'm Sasha.
I'm producer James.
And we're here to talk about X-Men First Class, minutes 50 through 60.
Sure are. Would you like to know what happens?
Yes, sir.
The first class hangs out.
Yeah, good vibes.
They have a good chill hang, and they act like children, which they mostly are.
Yeah.
Except for, Darwin's got a full taxi job, so I don't know how much of a kid he is.
I mean, they're like kind of...
I guess they all have jobs,
yeah,
but...
Mystique is a little...
I feel like
college.
Banshee's the only one that doesn't have a real job.
Yeah, that tracks.
Anyway, they all hang out. Professor X and Magneto sneak into another country, infiltrate a general's base, I guess, and capture Emma Frost.
There you go. We're not talking about that part.
No.
Today, we're going to talk about Darwin.
Yep.
The one guy.
Before he gets taken out, there's actually a shot that shows his full capabilities of what he can do.
Yes.
Kind of like they do in the comics.
Yeah, the gills is like a referenced thing. So, yeah, that's good
Which
too.
we'll get into. But while he's not being taken out like a punk, let's concentrate on Darwin.
It's crazy. Anyway, let's talk about him, because then we can talk about
it from the movie. Yeah.
This was. Yeah.
So Darwin, his real name is Armando Munoz, and he was born with it. Mm-hmm. He's one of them mutants.
Yes, like Nightcrawler.
Except for his appearance, it's not terribly inhuman.
No, he's larger than normal eyes.
Yes, and longer legs and longer arms, and no hair.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So
he's got like a weird skin color too in the comics.
It depends on who's drawing him.
The original
part of it.
So
yes.
in his first appearance, it's like it's almost like a chalky brown.
Yeah, there's like a grayish undertone to it, which is very unnatural for like skin tone.
Exactly. He looks slightly alien. Yeah. Is kind of how his vibe tends to be.
He kind of has those wide eyes that kind of like the classic little green men eyes. Like, yeah.
So his first appearance was in X-Men Deadly Genesis #2. And it is weird because it is a legitimate like origin story.
Yeah.
Like there's a story going on in X-Men Deadly Genesis, and then at the end of every issue there is a short story about a mutant that we have not met yet, which is the weird part.
Yeah.
So like he's only in this issue as like, here is Armando. He was born like this, like we just described.
Yeah.
His dad leaves
immediately because
he's a mutant. His mom is not happy with him.
No.
He gets sent to boarding school because he is smart, though.
Yeah, and his mom is super excited to have a chance to get rid of him.
And maybe get money on it.
Yeah, we'll talk about
funny.
that again.
Anyway.
There's a lot of that.
He gets bullied at school, and one of them is getting a swirly. Mm-hmm. And the kid is doing it a little too long. The other bullies are like, dude, you got to pull him up. And while he's under there, little gills start popping up on his neck. Mm-hmm. And he realizes, oh, I can breathe underwater. That's pretty cool. And so they find out through other whatevers that he has reactionary evolution is his power, which means he can evolve to whatever situation is put in front of him. Yeah. They describe a few times how if you put him in a pitch black room, he will get night vision.
Yeah.
If you like, there's times where they had him being like put on fire. Like he saves his mom from a fire in her house.
Yeah, because of her cigarette.
Because she fell asleep with a cigarette and it burned her house. He picks her up and takes her out and he is fine. No problems whatsoever.
Yeah. That's the kind of beginning of when he starts getting experimented on, right? When he goes back to school.
So that's the instance that kind of puts him in the limelight. So at his school, the professors, the scientists that are there.
It's crazy because it's like clearly an academy for children. Like this is not a research facility, or at least I didn't think it was, but they act like it is now. Yeah.
They watch to see how much he can take, and the answer is everything.
Yeah.
He can take it all. And that was just his origin story. So the rest of this book is interesting because it is a retcon. It is a big retcon book that I had not read until this research because I knew about it, but I was like, we'll run it. I know I'm going to run into it, so I'm just going to leave it. Basically, it takes giant size X-Men #1 and says, what if? Not what if, this is what happened. This is actually what happened behind the scenes. The OG team gets kidnapped.
Right.
Moira McTaggart has been finding mutants herself. And Darwin is one of these mutants. So is someone named Vulcan. which I will get to him in a minute. So Professor X goes to her and goes, I need help. My team is captured and I need them to be rescued. So in the original story, they're told Krakoa let Cyclops go to bring more mutants to the island.
Right.
This story says that's not true. This team rescued Cyclops and then they all got left behind.
Right.
And Professor X manipulated everyone's memories.
Because that's how he does sometimes.
The rest of Giant Size X-Men happens. Like, we get the team that we all know and love from the Claremont era.
Yeah.
What happened to the other team? Krakoa attacked them. And attacked them with, like, a lava monster. And when that happened, Darwin became a being of energy. And got absorbed by Vulcan.
Right.
Vulcan is the third Summers brother?
Yeah, we've briefly mentioned him, I believe.
So Cyclops and Havoc are brothers, and they have Vulcan, who was born in space.
Yeah.
And enslaved by the Shi'ar, and then came back to Earth.
Yeah. He's an Omega level mutant.
And he's an Omega level mutant, like energy manipulator.
Yeah.
So he basically had the whole team's powers because Darwin had absorbed all their powers and basically lived inside Vulcan this entire time.
Yeah.
End of that story. Vulcan gets exorcised, I guess, of Darwin. Like, so Darwin kind of gets spit out and then Darwin starts becoming a person again.
Because he's evolving back into a solid form.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's his that's his first story.
It's really interesting, right? Because you have this like kind of setup of this character that you're like, oh, is like he gonna be super important? He's getting all this backstory and he's involved with the Summers and then whatever, and then like we find out not really. Like we'll get there in a second, but he is not a super major character. I do want to have a complaint though, because I'm thinking about Giant Size, and I know that like this is pre the era where there was like a lot going on. But, like, couldn't they have gone to the Avengers? Like, Moira McTaggart's students that she's training, these are, like, young kids. She took Darwin from school. Yeah. Like
they say they're children.
Right.
They train these guys because they're not combat students.
They don't have any training.
They end up doing a psychic training.
Yeah.
Where Professor X basically does, like, a dream state slowdown of time.
Yeah.
They think they've been training for months and it's been hours.
Yeah. Like,
that's insane.
And, you might be like, well, okay, so he was able to do it. And you're like, they all died, basically, so it sucked. Like, it was not a solution. It was a really bad one.
They ended up throwing more mutants at the problem.
They literally did. And I'm like, why?
He sent 3 teams. That Giant Size X-Men is one of the biggest failures of the X-Men.
Truly, my God, like Professor Xavier, that is truly the beginning of when you're like, oh, he's a bad guy. Like if those retcons, like count all the things that happened, you're like, oh no.
He also knew they were brothers, and he kept it from Scott. He kept it a
secret,
and only Vulcan got him to like admit it.
Yeah. Vulcan has a lot of grievances. He's exhausting. We don't have time for this, but like. He's not wrong also. Like, that's actually part of it. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, and then Petra and Sway are the other 2 members that I think just die and never come back.
Not that I know of, yeah.
There is one part in Krakoa where I believe Vulcan thinks he sees them. Like, he talks to, like, fake versions of them.
When he's drunk. Yeah.
So that's interesting.
But I do think so, too, and I also find it really interesting that Xavier keeps not bringing back people who know about his misdeeds. Like, this is, like, a real thing.
Good. They're on the list. Way at the bottom.
Right. This is what I mean. He's such a nightmare. Like, he really is.
He gets his comeuppance every once in a while. It's not like he's not always scot-free.
Once in a while. Not often enough.
But first instance of Darwin not dying.
Yes. So these are his powers. There are some other ones he gets.
Okay.
So do you know about his death powers?
Not quite.
Okay.
Do tell.
So I'm gonna bring it back, but we're gonna travel to that point. So Darwin is this
I see it in the
character-
distance.
Right. Yeah. He's brought in. He's like they're doing Deadly Genesis. They're kind of doing a what if, like a huge retcon of like one of the most famous issues of X-Men.
Crazy.
You have to imagine that when this was coming out, like this is huge. Like if you have been following X-Men, to have a retcon to that issue, which was like already kind of not a retcon, but was like a way to get New Mutants into the story to like kick off the Claremont era. Like there is a little bit of like, I don't know, like it's
changing the status quo. Like it's a big change.
Yeah. And so you're like, oh my God, these are going to be like really important characters. I need to know a lot about this. That basically does not happen. Like Vulcan has like stuff going on in this era, but he doesn't become like a huge major player. Like I think a lot of people don't know who he is, even though he is a Summers brother.
I collect the board game Marvel United.
Yeah.
He is not even in a mutant set.
That's crazy. That is so disrespectful, and that's so funny.
I believe he's in an Inhuman set called War of Kings.
Really?
Yeah.
See?
Nuts. Well, so is Gladiator, but Gladiator's
he's a little different.
He's a little different.
Yeah. But this is what happens when you hang out too much in space with the Shi'ar. Like
right?
that's when you get put in the Inhumans bucket, and it sucks. Like
no one wants to be in the Inhumans bucket.
Nobody wants to be in the Inhumans bucket. So Darwin gets this kind of introduction, gets this massive retcon, and then basically does not become part of the X-Men at all. Where he does end up is in some of my favorite runs. He ends up at X Factor.
Where do you put mutants that don't belong on X-Men?
Yes.
In a different team.
And I mean, at the end of the day, X Factor is not a bad team to be on. No. This is the multiple man run. We're talking like Peter David era, like not the X Factor from Krakoa. There's like been a couple instances of this.
When we were talking multiple man, this was the run
exactly
we were talking.
Yeah. So during this run, some pretty like weird stuff happens that I don't believe have been followed through with.
Okay.
If anybody knows of like some spin-off weird Avengers Skrull crossover where they talk about this, that's not an X-Men book, please let me know, because I definitely didn't read that. But there is a whole plot about him and who he thinks is Longshot, but is actually a Skrull, where the Skrull says that Darwin is the missing link between Skrulls and humans.
Okay.
He defeats the Skrull later, and that's kind of the end of this arc, and he's like with X Factor now. And it also gets resolved in She-Hulk. This is why I'm saying there's some weird stuff, because this is X Factor 33 to 34, and then She-Hulk 31, where this like arc concludes.
Okay.
It's a mess. And so like I'm like reading the X-Men stuff, but I'm like, I'm not going any further than this one issue of She-Hulk. So if there's anything else on that side of the aisle,
you and me are different. I would go down that rabbit hole and then come back and go, there was nothing over there.
Right, exactly. I knew that's where that was going to put me, and so I decided not to do it.
I do like reading a She-Hulk though. So.
I know, she's great, but the point is,
was it Peter David writing that too?
I think so. Let me double check that. It's like a really interesting story. I could not find that being picked up. I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, this might explain why he has this little bit of an alien look, right? If they were originally going to be like, he's a missing link between
and
Skrulls.
Skrulls are shapeshifters. And
yeah. But I don't think they end up doing anything with that, because he basically just becomes kind of an X Factor person for a little bit.
This is sort of a tangent, but people have no prized, or it may have been George Lucas himself who has said this, that in Star Wars, the whole midichlorian thing, the reason it's brought up once and then never again in the movies is that Qui-Gon Jinn is like a believer that there is a connection between midichlorians and how big you are in the Force.
Interesting.
So they're like, well, he's sort of a zealot. So it could be that sort of situation where it's like, well, this Skrull was a part of a zealot group that thought that Darwin was the missing link. So we just checked real quick. It was Peter David writing She-Hulk.
Yes.
I feel like that happens a lot where it's like, oh, I'm writing She-Hulk and I'm writing X Factor, and I'm going to cross them over both because I can.
Yeah, and like the Skrulls, it's Secret Invasion time. This is a big plot point, and they're like tying this stuff together.
Secret Invasion, ignore the Disney Plus show.
Yes.
Is a very interesting plot device where if you wanted to, it was a big retcon machine in my head.
It really is.
Where they're like, oh, was someone being a jerk for decades? Let's rewrite that and say he was a Skrull the whole time.
Yeah, that like, Yeah.
And the biggest one was Hank Pym.
Hank Pym is the one that I was thinking
where
about.
It's like, oh, he wasn't a spouse abuser. That was a Skrull.
Yeah.
He's a good guy now. Ting.
It was a way to really fix a lot of mistakes they had made, but it is what it is.
But it was a very interesting idea.
Yeah.
Which you could expand to all the titles. Even if X-Men wasn't big in the Avengers world, they can do a Secret Invasion thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not getting into Secret Invasion.
No.
But I just
so you know what Secret, because we don't often talk about Secret Invasion.
No, because that's an Avengers thing. That's in my head. I know
it
that
is. No, you're not wrong.
But yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of big events that happen in the Avengers world.
Yeah.
That bleeds into X-Men, and it's usually X-Men has like a 3-issue mini about it, like Civil War. The X-Men don't mess around with Civil War.
No,
there's a 3-issue mini about it that I don't remember amounting to much.
Right. And sometimes the other way around too. Like X-Men, there will be like stuff that goes on in X-Men. They like don't call anybody, and then you get like Maria Hill just being like, like, I had to show up here again.
It is a running joke online where you're like, where was Spider-Man when you know this was going on?
But I mean, we were giving Professor Xavier a hard time earlier in this episode because like sometimes you can call them, like you can call the Fantastic Four if it doesn't have to, if you don't want to call the Avengers for whatever reason. But like they don't do that. And like it kind of makes sense though because the way that mutants are treated.
That, and if you are a guy like me who sometimes likes to be like, what was going on during this era? Everyone's got their own garbage going on.
Right.
You know, it's not like the Fantastic Four is always sitting around in the Baxter building. It's like, oh, they were in space.
Right, yeah. Which makes sense.
The Avengers, they were caught by Doctor Doom at that point. You know, there's I'm sure if you go and look what was happening during Giant Size X-Men, there's probably some nonsense that's going on with the Avengers too.
You're not wrong.
But you're not wrong. There is some Silver Age stuff, which it's like they'll check in on someone, and it's like there was one we did one time where they're like, oh, we need help. Call out to the Avengers. And literally everyone was busy but Iron Man. And that's so funny in my head that Iron Man was the only one who picked up the phone.
Not to like kind of veer this away from Darwin, because I do want to bring it back to him. But there was a period of time in the comics where like you had to know where everybody was concurrently in time.
Yes.
They stopped doing that. Wolverine is the reason they stopped doing that, because they were like, we want to put him in everything and you can't tie him down to just one thing.
Sure. They usually are pretty good about most X-Men being on one team or mentioning they were on the team and they came over for an issue, you know?
Yeah. But like they used to be much more like
diligent.
Editorial used to be like on it. Now it's not really quite the same.
There's too many characters.
Yeah, they can't keep track of all of them. In any case, while he's in X Factor, a couple things happen. There's hijinks. X Factor is a lot of stuff and like random things that are happening to these people that really basically don't affect anyone outside of this group. It really reminds me of Excalibur in a weird way, where like it's kind of its own thing, and like sometimes like it'll bleed into a different X-Men comic or whatever, or in this instance a She-Hulk comic. But for the most part, like they kind of run their hijinks. It's like an interpersonal conflict issue. Like the team of X Factor, especially in the Peter David run, is really about them trying to find themselves, and there's just about interpersonal conflict and
which
stuff
sounds
like that.
Amazing.
It's great. I'm a big fan. For example, so we know his mom hates him, even though he saved her life from the fire, and she abandoned him once she found out he was a mutant. But his dad comes back to try to build bridges.
Oh yeah?
Yes. And so
now he's a big fancy X Factor person.
Right. So he goes immediately to meet his dad and like try to create a relationship with him, only for him to be snatched up, shoved in a van, and sold to the Karmic Project for $500,000 for $500,000. And then when the dad is there while he's being like loaded up to be experimented on, the Karmic Project just shoots him, because they're like, we don't have to pay you $500,000. We can just kill you now. And they do. So that's that. So his dad is dead.
Okay. Fair enough.
But turns out his parents just kind of suck. This is par for the course for X Factor, in my opinion.
Okay.
This is just kind of how depressing all of their lives are as they try to navigate this. Some other things that happened in the X Factor run, which changed his power, which I think is really cool, is there was a point where X Factor took on Hela.
The god of death. The goddess of death.
Correct. Goddess of death from Thor. what he ends up, because he can absorb powers, as we mentioned, he gets her powers to see darkness in people's souls. And like he then transitions to becoming a Ronin style character, where he goes off to just like kill the worst of humanity, because he can see into their soul and see all the worst things that they've ever done, and he can dispatch them. And so that's what he does. So that's like X Factor. I know the numbering is so weird at this point. I'm sorry. It's X Factor 213 and 214, but I swear this is not that far away.
For those that aren't knee deep in the numbering system, what ends up happening is they start a new run with number 1. And then after they do a bunch, sometimes they go back to the legacy numbering system. Yeah. So it's like, this is how many actual X Factor numbers are there's 2 something.
Right.
Not because before we said 34.
Yeah, it's I promise
a lot of
weird.
A lot of them do it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's hard to keep track, and it makes it worse. And they don't have a really good system of sorting this out. But Peter David 213 214 will get you in the right spot if you're just looking.
Yeah. Well, it honestly is easier when the numbers are higher.
Yeah,
because there aren't multiples.
Right, because there's not as many ones.
Yeah.
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 I literally, when I was first reading Krakoa, I made a mistake and I thought I had read everything. Of course you did. And there was a whole new run that was like 2019 and not 2020. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was behind.
Krakoa got real bad with some of the number 1s.
It's horrible. They ran so many number 1s.
They should not have.
I'm sorry. They should not have. They should have made that continuous.
I think when they start a new era, you can do the number 1.
Yes.
And then when the era is over,
you can start again.
I
think those are sane rules, James, and they just refuse to stick to them.
I can see the argument of like, this is a good point to jump on, but when you're midway through Krakoa and you know it's not going to last 25 years,
yeah,
please
stop doing this.
Keep it going.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, and for people who don't know, a lot of this was propelled in the 90s by like that collection boom of like the number 1s being worth a lot. And so like it created this like weird, horrific like industry cycle of like, there's also the psychological piece, right? Of like, oh, it's number 1, I can start here.
Sure.
But
I've picked up some number 1s though, and I'm like, I picked up a run of Spider-Man, like the most recent run. Picked up number 1 and was like, what am I missing? Turns out nothing.
Yeah.
It was a like, here's what happened, and there's a time jump somewhere.
Okay.
But because I picked up number 1, I was like, oh, I just missed something, and I stopped reading.
See?
I had to talk to someone to be like, oh, no, you're supposed to be confused. I was like, cool.
Good to know.
Thanks, number 1.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, because like if you pick up Krakoa 2021, like the number 1 instead of 2019, you're going to have no idea you're going to have no idea what's going on, like at all. So yeah. In any case, 213, 214, this is when he has like this. So he gets Hela's powers because he absorbed it. Mm-hmm. And so this also comes with like kind of weirdly prophetic dreams, but they're vague. They're not like some of the other like psychics.
Precogs.
Yeah, precogs where they're like, they're like, they nail it. Like they know exactly what's happening. He just gets like weird visions that he has to interpret. So for example, like he dreams about this like man that's like, that takes him, like he's like in the Old West and he takes him out and the guy's name is Tyr and he like shoots him and he like, and they like, have a shootout or whatever and talking about the apocalypse. Turns out how this is interpreted by Darwin is that Wolfbane has a son named Tyr, and he comes to the conclusion through the dreams and stuff, and he is right that this son is going to bring about the apocalypse.
Not Apocalypse the character.
Correct.
Okay.
Just an apocalypse.
Lowercase.
Yes. There's like a bunch of gods and like weird stuff going on because these are like gods and Hela, and we're talking about Thor stuff.
The Asgardian nonsense.
Yeah, and more than just Asgardians too. It's just a real mess. But basically, the long story short is like for fun, they were like, okay, whoever can kill this soul, because he's like the 7th millionth soul on Earth or whatever. Anyway, so if you kill that soul, you become like the ruler of all of the like hells or whatever. Like that, you become like this like big god. So like all these people are trying to like kill him, but like obviously there's like a bad apocalypse if a bad guy kills him, right? Sure. And they become the leader. And this is like this becomes like a chase. It kind of reminded me of like the Chapes of Hope, where I think you've read this run more thoroughly
the Cable
than I
Run.
have. Yes.
The post-Messiah complex.
Right.
Cable Run.
They're on the run for Bishop, right?
Correct.
Yeah, who's trying to kill them.
Yeah.
To save the world, he thinks.
Both of them think, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening here, but he just predates that.
Yeah, with Hope's, it's like Cable's future, Hope is a savior, and Bishop's future, Hope is the cause of all of the destruction.
Right.
But like neither one is confirmed.
See, that's the problem with time travel.
So Bishop is trying to kill her while they're on the run, and Cable is trying to save her. So the whole run is just a cat and a mouse time travel running
Nonsense.
story. It's great.
So less time travel, no time travel, in fact.
Okay.
But basically same thing. Like originally he's just running, chasing after Tyr, and then it's Tyr and Wolfsbane. It's a whole thing. She initially rejected him because it was a traumatic birth. It was a mess. I'm not saying I love this, but I am saying that it happened. It was weird, but like it is kind of this weird thing where like you have Darwin who is chasing you, and his powers are like particularly like terrifying for an assassin, right?
Yeah.
He could literally turn into anything he wants. Like he can like force evolution to like do things. That's part of his powers, right? If he's like caught up with ropes, he can kind of like force it now that he has more control over his powers, like cut through the ropes, right?
There was one of in his backstory, he was trying to kill himself, and so he jumps off a tall building, but his body becomes lighter and his legs and arms become more like springy, so he just kind of lands softly on the ground, and he's like, well, I guess this is my power.
This is it. Yeah. And then this is really sad. What ends up happening is Strong Guy ends up killing Tyr by accident. He's another member of X Factor, and it's really sad. And he has to like, but part of the reason he's doing it is to resurrect Monet, who dies because Darwin saw that it was going to happen. It's complicated. It's sad. Everybody dies all the time in X Factor.
Except for Darwin.
Except for Darwin.
Movie.
Until. Yes. So, okay. So before we go too much further, there is one instance where Darwin dies that I know of.
There's one that I know of.
It's the same one.
Okay.
It's the Children of the Vault in the Krakoa
It
era.
is, yeah.
Yeah. Spoilers. That basically there's this big vault where people live and they're investigating, like time moves differently in there, and Darwin is sent in there to investigate it.
It's an accelerated time bubble.
Yeah. And it's kind of like post-human. I don't know how to describe the Children of the Vault.
I don't remember why it even exists, but I know it exists.
I'm pretty sure the reason is why is for humans to have their own potential way of dealing with mutants.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Krakoa has them in a safe.
They lock them
up. And they send in Sync, Laura Kinney, Wolverine, and Darwin, because they're the only three that could survive as much time is going to spend there and make it back out with information. It's just a recon mission.
Right.
Darwin ends up getting captured at one point. It was a trap.
Yeah.
The other two make it out. And Darwin basically gets almost experimented on because of his evolutionary capabilities.
He does get experimented
on.
And
he gets atomized. And then his body brings him back together, and he gets atomized again, and it brings him back together. And they basically keep running the same experiment on him over and over again for...
It's like 10,700 and something cycles.
Wow, you're really close.
Yeah.
10,278 cycles. Basically, his ability stops working. That's what it takes to kill this guy.
Yeah.
He was also in there for a long time before that even happened.
Cycles are like sped up years, I think, if I remember correctly,
Something like that.
There's a way to convert that.
I don't even think they know how long they were in there, but they were in there a long time.
Very long time. It ends up creating a very interesting story between Laura Kinney, Sync later. It's great. Darwin doesn't make it out, but Sync does and is able to upload the information. The story moves along, but
Darwin only gets resurrected. He just gets resurrected, but with his memories before he went in the vault.
Right.
So that is the only Darwin I know that has actually died.
Same. So when I was watching this movie and they decided the person who should die is Darwin, insane decision.
Bonkers.
That is an insane decision. If Darwin cannot, and I think the reason he couldn't teleport out of the vault is because the vault had like a anti-teleport. It had like weird tech. Mm-hmm. He can just teleport.
They captured him in an energy bubble.
Yeah, there's
and then I think the bubble was there when they were kept atomizing him. So like they definitely showed something where he was like trapped with future tech.
He's like tied down and stuff. Yeah, but for the most part, he can just vanish, disappear. If he can't, like for example, there's one time he's up against the Hulk and he just teleports like thousands of miles away where the Hulk can't fight him because he can't fight him. Mm-hmm. Like, so there's no end to his ability to create, to get himself out of situations. Really, you have to atomize him for literally thousands of years in order to eventually have a chance of killing him.
What if in a future movie Darwin shows up?
I actually would love that.
What's up, suckers? I'm all right.
We're never going to do that because we're in a totally different era now.
They should have done it with, he should have showed up in Deadpool and Wolverine. That's all I'm saying. I actually think
so too. But it was just like, it was bonkers. It's a weird way to kill off a character that is literally unkillable. That's literally his whole thing.
Basically, the only explanation is he's not as powerful.
Right. And that's what what they're using.
Dumb.
But his power,
it's not even like, this is not a power creep situation.
No.
This is not he got better over time. And it's not like a Marvel girl who could barely lift a book when she started and is one of the most powerful mutants ever. This dude couldn't be killed from the jump.
Yeah. I mean, he literally is a birth mutant, right? A rare thing in and of itself. Like, so yes, he wasn't able to do like, he grows by being able to transform by thinking really hard for things that aren't immediately threatening his life, so he doesn't have to be threatened. That's the way that he grows his powers. But if he is going to die, his powers automatically kick in.
That's what I'm saying.
It's crazy that the movie I'm like, couldn't you pick literally anybody else?
I honestly didn't. When I first watched it, I didn't have an issue with it. I was like, oh, he just couldn't do it fast enough. You know, it almost felt like you hit him once and it maybe would hurt. You hit him a second time, it won't hurt. But that's not how his powers work.
No.
After reading anything with him in it, you're like, nope. Sorry, bro. That's not how this works.
Yeah. And they clearly depowered him because they were like, this is going to be impossible. Like, there's no stakes if he is his character. But at the same time, it's like you could have picked a different character.
You could have brought in Petra or Sway.
Yeah, there's
if you want to do. We have dead mutants that were like dead from the get go.
Yeah,
something
literally.
And that's just two examples from his story.
Right. There's so many other ones you could pick. It was just like, I don't know. It didn't really make any sense. Like as a comic reader, obviously for the movie, like if you don't know what his power set is and it's a different power set, like I guess anything is possible.
Sure.
But if you're trying to like be like, oh, I'm kind of curious about this person from the books, it's like, sure, he's not a main character. We talked about it. He's mostly an X Factor and then kind of falls off a cliff. But like
into a vault, yeah.
Right. But like he is consistent. So it's strange to do something so weird with him.
Yeah.
If you're going to use that character at all. I don't know. That's all I've got. That's my rant over.
I agree.
All right. Well, it's been Stasha.
I'm producer James.
And we'll see you for the next 10.